Okay, my clock says 2 o'clock, so I'll welcome everyone to our June 6th council meeting and officially call the meeting to order. I was reminded earlier today by Councillor McCabe that June 6th is a very important date, and I wanted to give him the opportunity to speak about why he sees it as important. I share his thing, but I wanted to give him a chance to speak about it. So I'll just turn over briefly to Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox, and through you and with your indulgence. On this day in June 6, 1944, 78 years ago, Canadian soldiers stormed the beach in Normandy, taking Juno Beach. And in that time, we lost 14,000 Canadian soldiers on that day and in that insurgents to free France and Europe. As Arthur is Canada's most patriotic village, I would request a minute of silence to pay tribute to those people who gave their lives so that we and indeed the world could be free. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Steve, for the reminder of that and for reminding us all of the importance of that in our daily lives. We'll now move on to adopting the agenda for today's meeting. I have a recommendation here that the agenda for the June 6, 2022 regular meeting of council be accepted and passed. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to disclosure of pecuniary interest. I have none to declare with regard to anything on today's meeting. Councillor Burke?
No.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hearn?
No.
Councillor Yake?
No.
Councillor McCabe?
I have none, Mayor.
Great, thank you. We will now move on to presentations, and with us today we have Al Dam, Provincial Poultry Specialist, Ontario Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. Welcome, Al. As I think you may be aware, we've had some interest expressed in urban poultry again, and with all the concern around the avian flu issue, we thought we'd love to hear from somebody who knows more about it than we do, to better understand the context of the challenge before us. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, well, and thanks everyone for inviting me. So yeah, today you guys want to hear about urban poultry and the pros and cons of it. I'm gonna try and run through a fair bit of information for you guys in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. We're gonna talk about everything from some of the pros, some of the challenges with education, and then some of the challenges you may run into as a municipality dealing with poultry. So, as you're aware, poultry is a supply managed commodity in Ontario. You've got a number of poultry farmers in your municipality on the chicken, layer, turkey, and broiler breeder side. When it comes to backyard flocks, you guys will have a lot to deal with on there. So I'll just run through some of the pros and cons. I'll share my screen and show you some of the issues we are having with avian influenza and some of the resources that are out there to help you make your decision. So let's start with the pros. So from the pro side, you know, the urban poultry file, I'm going to call it a file because I deal with this with many municipalities. You've got the local food movement enjoys that there's an educational component where Johnny can figure out where his food comes from. There is a mental health component to it too. I've had that mentioned to me many a time with some of the other projects that I've been involved with. When it comes to the cons, and this is where, I'm just going to lay it out there because there's no other way to really do it. We'll be dealing with everything from what I call urban vermin. So in town, that's, and as most like everything eats chicken. So whether it's going to be rodents dealing with stealing, going after feed or eggs, or chicks, foxes, coyotes, the neighbor's dog or cat, skunks, coons, pretty much everything, plus the raptors that are out there. So when I say raptors, I mean hawks, eagles. I've even seen turkey vultures swoop in and take some. There is a food safety component you need to think about. Unlike a puppy or a kitten, you're actually eating something that comes out of this animal. So there is a food safety component to that to make sure that that's being managed properly. Numbers are always going to be an issue. So if you're going to decide to move ahead with something like this, our recommendation has been, and I do a course with the Poultry Industry Council that I'll show you in a little bit, where we do not recommend many hen, right? Because in full lay, she's going to lay about an egg a day. So people say, oh, I'll just get a half dozen hens or a dozen hens. Well, that's a dozen eggs a day. If you really like eggs, that's going to be a great thing. But if you can't, then you're going to have a surplus of eggs and not know what to do with them. If people start selling eggs, there's some challenges with there. People get sick from the eggs because of issues with management or nutrition, disease. Whatever goes into the hen comes out in the egg. So you can't be giving antibiotics to a hen and consume the eggs at the same time. Dead stock's going to be an issue for you guys also. So in agriculture, dead stock, when I say dead stock, like we have livestock, we have dead stock. If you have a dead animal, you need to be able to dispose of it properly. In agriculture, we have the Nutrient Management Act and the dead animal disposal component to that. There's regulations as to what you can do with it. In town, it's going to be on you guys as far as the municipality goes as to how you want to deal with that. I've had folks say to me, well, I'll just put it in the garbage. That is technically a biohazard. Your folks that do garbage pickup may not appreciate that. The argument then becomes, well, I put chicken in the garbage all the time. And so that chicken was processed and deemed fit to eat at a processing plant. We don't know what your bird has died from. Marketing is going to be also an issue. So you are allowed to have up to 300 chickens under the family food program with Chicken Farmers of Ontario without quota. 99 hens, laying hens, and 50 turkeys. If someone's going to be selling stuff, it can only be farm gate sale. So and what that means is I can put a sign up the end of my driveway saying eggs for sale if I'm in a rural area. I can't sell eggs to the grocery store, to the restaurant, at church or whatever, because that's considered marketing. And also, if it's not farm gate sale, it's harder to trace back in case there's any health issues. So, if you're going to allow urban poultry, you're going to have to deal with a surplus of eggs and how people are going to get rid of them. Noise can be an issue. That can be rectified fairly easily by not allowing any roosters. Odor, flies, those nuisance complaints can be an issue. Birds produce a pound of high-test manure a day. One hen will produce about 1 pound of manure a week. This stuff will be high-test in terms of its nutrient content. That leads to some other challenges in dealing with that amount of manure. I'm not sure if Wellington North has any, we call it a WAPA, a wellhead protection area, where this might be going in, but that'll be a nutrient challenge that may become an issue for a certain area, because you can't even have a dog kennel if you're in a WAPA. But the other component is people say, well, we'll put it in the garden, which you can do, but we don't recommend putting raw manure into a garden, because if there's anything the birds have, like salmonella, that can actually get transferred into the vegetables. So you need to compost that manure for at least a number of months and let it heat treat before you put it in the garden. If it goes into flowers and something you're not going to consume, that's an issue, but the amount of nitrogen in there is pretty significant. Flies are going to be an issue. I'm actually dealing with a fly complaint tomorrow on the Niagara Peninsula, where we've got some birds that are, birds are fantastic if it's not managed properly, birds can be a fantastic way to generate lots of flies. And when I say flies, I just mean the flies, like house fly that you see buzzing around in your house. And what else we have? Yeah, housing, nutrition. I'm going to touch on housing a little later. Nutrition can be an issue. People think they can feed birds table scraps and whatnot. That's to an extent, but if you're getting a ready-to-lay hen, she has a fair bit of requirements in terms of protein and calcium. So you end up with issues with the birds in terms of health. Healthcare is an issue too. I know a lot of municipalities that have gone through with this don't want to make sure that their residents who are doing this have access to healthcare. Once again, your companion animal that cannot necessarily treat a food animal, which this would be. So you need someone with a veterinarian who can do food animal practice for that. Urban poultry can be the biggest challenge I see with urban poultry is education. A lot of people think they know what they're doing, and some people actually do, but a pile don't, and that leads to a bunch of other challenges. So right now, I'm just going to quickly share my screen, and I'll show you some of the resources that are available out there. This is the Poultry Industry Council website. They actually have a Raising Backyard Chickens course that we do. I do this with them every March. I actually have a PowerPoint presentation. I'll just put this over here so I can show it to you. It's a 4-hour course. It's 187 slides. We go through everything I just talked about with all the challenges. So like I said, coop requirements are going to be an issue. The sky's the limit as to what you want to do. You can get portable shelters, but you're going to see stuff like this out there, and that's going to be a challenge as to how you manage that. Some of the other things we deal with is winterizing a coop. So how you're going to manage that is going to be up to you. But if we have birds that look like this, they're not going to overwinter very well. So it means we need to prevent things like frostbite. We need to insulate the barn properly. We have to have proper feed and water for them during the winter months, including heaters. And we can end up with things like fires or birds that aren't ventilated properly that end up with frostbite or blindness from ammonia. So these can all be issues. And once again, there's a lot here. Finally, I just want to talk about some of the challenges we've had, and remember, we touched on it, avian influenza. Right now in Ontario, we're dealing with 26 different infected premises with AI. And if I scroll in here, one of them includes or just bypasses Arthur. We still haven't got this zone released. Within these zones, there's limitations as to what you can do as a commercial operator and as a backyard flock. Our last IP was up here. The town of Georgina actually has an urban poultry bylaw, so they've had to notify all their folks about some of the things that are involved, like permitting, and backyard flocks are not exempt from permitting. This is from Canadian Food Inspection Agency. They're the ones who are in charge of this. We provide support. But this disease in North America has been quite devastating. You can see we've seen a lot of positives throughout North America. It's into Alaska and the Yukon. We've just found some. And when you look at this, so commercial poultry is the red dots, yellow is the backyard flocks, green is wild bird. So this disease has been impacting commercial, backyard flocks, wild birds, and now we're seeing it in wild mammals. So foxes, skunks, mink have been, like the ones that are scavenging, have been found with disease in it. We have an avian influenza page at the ministry, but we also have a number of resources that are out there to so for folks can recognize what it is, and this goes for backyard flocks or commercial operations also. The industry is pretty much in full lockdown right now. When it comes to our wild bird positives, there is quite a lot that we're seeing, and take into account, this is only birds that are submitted to our lab to see if they have positive influenza. So there is a ton of different things going on right now on this disease. We have not had new infections lately. Alberta and BC had new infections over the weekend, so this disease is not over, and we're concerned that it'll ramp up again this fall. So most of my work plan since January has been the response to highly pathogenic avian influenza, and it has included dealing with these IPs, dealing with both backyard and commercial, and some of these are commercial operations, some of these are backyard flocks. The response is the same from CFA. They come in, they quarantine the farm, they order the animals destroyed, they set up these zones where you've got, this is the primary control zone, the red is the infected zone, so that's about a 3K zone, this is about a 10K zone. We only have one zone that's been revoked, that was a backyard flock out here by Peterborough, but we still have a number of them throughout the province that are still active. So if you end up with a urban poultry avian influenza outbreak, you will be asked by CFA to have that, well, they will order that flock destroyed. They may be requesting from you where all the other urban poultry sites are as part of the response. From a municipal standpoint, there's not a lot you need to do from a support standpoint unless we need you to, or we're called on to control roadways, or potentially you might be asked for a demolition permit or a burn permit if we can't clean and disinfect. Some of these zones will have been up for quite a while. These zones all impact trade. Also, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up to these zonings. We can't export anything out of these zones in terms of poultry products. Now, yes, we are supply managed, but we actually have a lot of genetics we sell from Ontario on the turkey side, the layer side, and the duck side that go out of this province. And if you're in that zone, you cannot export any of that product. So until that zone is released, the impact of that zone impacts the farmer themselves or the infected premise and everyone in a 10K zone around you, where you have to go through this permitting procedure with CFIA. So anyways, it is, there's a lot I just dumped on you, but I will open up to questions if anyone has any.
Okay. Could you stop sharing your screen, please, Al? Thank you. Any questions for Al from council? Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Dan. That was a pretty interesting presentation. Just explain to me again, what happens if there's an outbreak in a backyard residential area? What's the process there?
The process would be exactly the same if it was a commercial flock or a backyard flock out in the country. CFI would come in, test the birds. If they test positive, they probably will institute a quarantine on that location. And then if they come back positive, the birds will be ordered destroyed. A zone will be created, which will be approximately 10 kilometers. So everyone in that 10-kilometer zone now is restricted in terms of movement of poultry. And until that site is cleaned and disinfected according to CFIA standards, and that standard, you should quantify that standard for cleaning and disinfection. That's not a CFIA standard, that's an international standard for us to get our trade status back. In some cases, that has meant we've burned coops to the ground. Clean and disinfect them if you can't. Like some of our commercial poultry operations are designed to be C&D'd. Some of the backyard flocks we've been to are, and one of the possibilities is if a farmer or a resident can't disinfect that flock, that zone stays up in perpetuity. So then you impact every poultry holder in that 10K zone until that gets dealt with. So
that includes all commercial producers, residential producers, etc.
Every Tuesday night since beginning of March, I was doing urban poultry webinars, and we had urban, like backyard flock folks, we had urban poultry, we had people with pet birds like parrots, pigeons, all the rest of that stuff. Like this, it's called avian influenza. It's not called chicken influenza. Mm-hmm. Any avian species can be impacted by that. So yeah, it becomes quite a significant burden, say, on the resident and then in that zone too, because
Sure.
it includes permitting, includes the fact that folks don't want to drive through that zone if they have poultry products. They can't drive through that zone. If they do, they got to get permits for it. You know, the feed mills, anyone who's an input supplier, or if eggs are coming off the farm, everything's got to be permitted. So it becomes quite a challenge.
Sure. Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Andy, and thanks, Al, for coming today. That's like Dan said, it's enlightening. I think we've made the right decision in protecting all of our commercial flocks, not just chicken, but turkey, everything. But I have one quick question for you, Al. Is just say I had a backyard coop, and I'm giving eggs away to my neighbors and stuff like that, and then there's my chickens test positive. What happens with the eggs that were already given away, or someone bought them at the end of the laneway? How do you even start to trace something like that? And would the eggs also carry disease?
So for avian influenza, there's not supposed to be disease transmission through the egg, but eggs are ordered destroyed also, right? And then they'll do a trace back, because if someone who bought eggs from you went home and say they had poultry also, then their farm will be part of the will be part of the investigation to make sure that you haven't inadvertently spread disease, whether it's through poultry or poultry products, or even a dirty shovel that you lent to somebody else, right? Or a wheelbarrow or whatever. So this disease is a disease of biosecurity, but it's a disease of communication also. So if people aren't aware of that, CFIA will go back about 21 days in terms of from when they realize there's a problem. They'll go back 21 days and try and figure out who's been on your location, whether that's a commercial site, a backyard flight site, or even an urban poultry site. So, that I'll just pull that string a little further. Say at a bylaw officer that was trying to look at the sites and make sure they were up to snuff or whatever, they inadvertently could have been spreading disease also. So there's a pretty complicated and complex route that has to happen. Other diseases other than avian influenza can be in the egg, right? Like salmonella, like E. coli. So that is why you don't want someone selling eggs. Generally, most municipalities don't allow even sale of eggs, because if your birds get sick and you make yourself sick, we know where the eggs went. If you're distributing eggs all over the place, then we have a public health issue trying to trace that down. And from a commercial standpoint, when people hear that someone got sick from eating eggs, it doesn't matter whether it was from backyard flock or in BC, they just think eggs. Like, there's a concern that there's going to be an impact on the commercial side also.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Al? Okay, I'm not seeing any others. But again, thank you, Al, for taking the time to come and share that information with us. We've certainly been hearing about avian influenza, but it's good to understand more fully the impact that it has, not only on an individual poultry producer, but on all of them in the neighborhood as well. So I know that,
and it will impact things like hatcheries, feed mills, like any of your input suppliers, your dealers also. So it goes beyond just the infected premise. So yeah, didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah, I just want to make sure you understood the impact of what this foreign animal disease means when it comes to a response. Yeah,
so that's great. Thank you very much for taking the time to share that with us today.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is to recess to go into a public meeting for Committee of Adjustment. So a recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North recess the June 6, 2022 regular meeting of Council for the purpose of holding a public meeting under the Planning Act at 2:24 p.m. for Marvin and Warren Gingrich. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we are recessed from our council meeting. We'll switch over to our Committee of Adjustment meeting, and I'll call the Committee of Adjustment for June 6th to order and ask if there's any disclosure of community interest with today's application A15/22. I have none to declare. Councillor McCabe?
I have none, Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Yake?
No.
Councillor Hearn?
No.
Councillor Burke?
No.
Okay, thank you. So we'll first deal with the minutes of the previous Committee of Adjustment meeting from May 24th, application A11 through A14. So the recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes of May 24th, 2022, A11/22, A12/22, A13/22, and A14/22 be adopted, as presented. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Steve. Any question on those minutes? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Our application for today, A15/22 for Marvin and Lorna Gingrich. The location of the subject property is described as Concession 8, North Part Lot 6, and is municipally known as 9439, Concession 8, Wellington North. The subject lands are approximately 40 hectares in size, and the location is shown on the map in your package. The purpose and effect of the application is to provide relief from the minimum interior side yard setback requirement for the proposed bunker silo. Proposed variances will prevent a reduced side yard setback of 6.09 meters, whereas the bylaw requires 18.3 meters for buildings accessory to an agricultural use. Other variances may be considered where deemed appropriate. How was notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to property owners within 60 meters of the subject property, as well as the applicable agencies, and posted on the subject property on May 13th, 2022.
Great, thank you. Jessica, could you run through the details of this application, please?
Yes, thank you. So we have our application in front of us today. It's in order to request for a reduced interior side yard setback for the proposed bunker silo to be located on the property. The reason for this location is to allow for access from the existing driveway on the property, and also to provide operation efficiency within the existing farm building cluster. So the reduced setback is a difference of 12.21 meters, or approximately 40 feet, and planning staff have no concerns with the application.
Okay, thank you. Has any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
No further correspondence has been received.
Okay. So just notice that any persons requesting to be notified of the decision must submit a written request to the Secretary Treasurer. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments from the applicant or the public. Do we have anyone registered to speak on this one?
Marvin Gingrich was registered to speak. I see he is on the call here. I'm not sure if he's been able to unmute himself.
Okay.
He uses
Marvin,
*6. He may be able to unmute himself.
Okay.
Yes, hi everyone, this is Marvin Gingrich. I am thankful that you have considered the application, and I don't have any further comments to make really, more than I'd like to give the privilege to anybody that wants to provide something if they have against what I would desire to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. Do we have anyone else registered to speak in this regard to this application?
No, we don't.
Okay, well, I'll turn it over to committee members then. Any questions, comments from committee members? Steve?
Just, and through you, Mayor, just have a quick question. Just wondering why it needs to be so close to the property line of his neighbors. That's the only question I have.
Okay, Marvin, are you able to respond to that?
The reason for it is because my whole building cluster is located very close to the sideline.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so then we'll go to the decision, and it reads as follows: that the minor variance applied for in application A15/22 for the property described as concession 8, North Part Lot 6 with a civic address of 9439 concession 8, to provide the following relief. Number 1, that a reduced interior side yard setback of 6.09 meters be permitted for a proposed bunker silo feed storage accessory building, whereas the bylaw requires 18.3 meters. All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. So that's approved. We'll move to adjournment then of our Committee of Adjustment. And a recommendation here that the Committee of Adjustment meeting of June 6, 2022 be adjourned at 2:31 p.m. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please?
Sure.
Moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. So we're adjourned from our Committee of Adjustment meeting. Thank you, everyone. We'll move back to our regular council agenda. So in order to resume our regular meeting of council, I have a recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North resume the June 6, 2022 regular meeting of council at 2:32 p.m. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're back in our council meeting. First, we'll deal with the minutes of our previous council meeting and public meeting. And I have a recommendation that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on May 24th, 2022 be adopted as circulated. So I can move her in a seconder for that, please. Moved by Steve, seconded by Dan. Thank you. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next up is our regular report with regard to the Mount Forest pool replacement. And we have the report before you again this meeting. Just to get things started off, last meeting we talked about approaching our neighboring municipalities for contributions towards the pool replacement project. We agreed that we would take that on ourselves, but we did not talk about timing with regard to that. So just to kind of provide some clarity around that, my recommendation would be probably we should look to start that process fairly soon. Although we are in a municipal election year, it's probably would be a good idea to get in front of councils prior to the change, but not expect necessarily a decision until after the new council are sworn in the fall. So I'll open that up for discussion. I just thought maybe it would be a good idea to kind of clarify what our intentions are around that. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fine with presenting it to West Grey and Southgate in the not too distant future to get that ball rolling and get some talk going with our neighbors. And then I guess, yeah, we'd have to probably wait to hear what they came back with. If they came back with an answer right away before the municipal election, great. But if not, I mean, we'd have to wait to hear from them. I'm not sure. Obviously, it would be great to get contribution from West Grey or from Southgate, but I don't think it should delay the pool at all, though, as well, depending either way on their answer.
Dan, go ahead.
Should we maybe, I guess neither one of, I guess no other municipality has been approached yet, right, in regards to financial contributions. Would it be, could we draft a letter and send it and kind of get their feedback from that, and then take it from there? I mean, a letter that was done kind of immediately would get in their hands certainly a lot quicker than trying to set up a meeting. So if we drafted a letter from the municipality explaining what the project was about, timing, and asking for, you know, if they'd be interested in financial assistance, then they could possibly deal with it in the very near future.
Okay. That's it's not a bad idea, Dan. Let's just carry on and see how others feel about that approach too. Anyone else want to weigh in on this? Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fine with reaching out to them. I would suspect that if we kind of do a combined approach that's being discussed here, that if there's interest, when you go to the council meeting, that you're probably going to want as much information as possible. So they're going to probably want to see what, you know, conceptually what it's going to look like. So in the interim, if you send out a letter and then there seems to be, you know, a bit of an uptake, that there seems to be some interest, then that gives you time to prepare to go to a council meeting.
Okay. Any other discussion? So I think what I'm hearing is short term, send a letter to the neighboring municipalities to explain the project in general terms, and you know, make a formal request for some assistance in terms of the capital project, and include that with an offer to come and make a presentation to their council as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll need to get a letter drafted and get sent off to them. Okay.
Oh, just Dan.
Go ahead, Dan.
Just, I guess maybe the letter, you know, should be, I don't know if it comes from the municipality or that it should come from you know, either yourself and Councillor McCabe and Councillor Burke as kind of the main, you know, I don't know who you send it from. Do you just send it basically from the municipality, or do you know, attach some names to it, so to make it maybe a little more personal?
Well, I think that's great to get down to that detail in terms of it needs to come from council in my general terms, but to suggest that Councillor McCabe and Burke and perhaps myself would visit their council and make a more formal presentation would be appropriate as well. I think that's a great suggestion. Steve?
Yeah, I'm all for that as well. I think you obviously, and then Sherry, and then as chair of REC, I think that'd be a good approach for sure.
Okay. Okay. Any other items that people would like to bite off of this list for today's discussion? Steve? You're muted, by the way, Steve.
Sorry, I wouldn't mind 2A and 2D under the plan.
Just back up a second.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking items of consideration. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Oh, sorry, maybe I spoke in a confusing manner, but I was just wondering if there's any other items with regard to the pool report that we'd like to pull out of that list that Mike gave us for further discussion today, to try to, you know, knock off an item or two. Now every meeting we can get there fairly quickly.
I'm good.
Just Andy,
ahead,
just in regards to the report, I think it's well put together. It certainly gives a lot of food for thought on how we're going to move forward and what some of the financing or some of the debt may look like. So yeah, I would agree that if we can start to kind of knock some of these off, then we should be able to move forward.
Okay. And since nobody else is jumping forward, one of the items I was thinking maybe we could pull out for some discussion, and that is around the scope of the project, or I think in Mike's report he refers to it as the budgetary cap or something of that nature. I'm just thinking we might be worthwhile for us to get a bit more detailed understanding of the project and what the drivers of cost may be, so that we can understand whether it makes any sense to try to limit the budgetary creep that sometimes goes with a project like this, or whether we should be looking to, I don't like to put it this way, but modify the scope of the project a little bit, maybe less deck area or something like that might have a significant savings attached to it. So one of the suggestions I've heard of was to maybe invite the architect to come and present to us some information with regard to what happens elsewhere and where there may be some cost savings opportunities. And just wanted to see whether council was interested in pursuing that, to look at, maybe there's ways that we can reduce the size of the budget that would be needed regarding this project. So I guess I'm looking for some feedback. Steve?
Yeah, I don't know why inviting the architect to come and present or to see if there's ways that we can trim some off of the amount of the pool without hindering the quality of what we want to have for our community. I think it's probably not a bad idea.
Okay. Other thoughts, comments? Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'd be okay with that. I think that in some of the comments that we got from the surveys, they also had some relatively good ideas, because the concrete is probably not going to go down in price, but if there are ways that we can maybe scale back some of that decking, or I don't know how else we would do it, but it would be interesting to see if there are other ways that could happen. Potentially the bleachers are on the inside, maybe they could be on the outside, and to look at options that way. So I'm okay to support trying to knock item number 1 off the list.
Okay. Dan, Lisa, any thoughts? Dan, go ahead.
Well, I guess anytime you can kind of, there's always, there's always changes. I guess sometimes they're midstream in projects like this. So, yeah, I don't think it can hurt to kind of continue to work with the, with the architect or design firm to try to see what we could do to kind of, we're try to save some money or try to make it more efficient one way or the other. I think it's always part of the discussion when you're trying to put a project like this together. So yeah, I know that's a good idea.
Okay, Lisa.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good approach, and I think it's quite honestly, it's part of our due diligence that we need to do to such a large project. So I think we should be examining those options.
Dan, go ahead.
Just another quick question, I guess, Andy, in regards to the pool. If the pool was I'm going to just be hypothetical here. If the pool was $5 million, if that was the bottom line, and I know that there's been I saw there's a kind of a debenture schedule here put together. But have we kind of broke, and maybe it's here, but I just really haven't found it. If it was a $5 million project, have we broken down to the point where we've said, okay, we're going to have to we have $2 million that we're going to apply to this, and we're going to borrow $3 million, or we have $2.5 million and we're going to borrow $2.5 million. Or do we have $5 million that we're going to put to this and get it done? Have we broken down that far? And I know we have a new treasurer here today. I'm not sure. I thought I saw him on the line. I don't want to throw him into this discussion too deeply on his first day, but I'm just wondering, I guess if you were looking at it, if you're going to buy a new car and it was $50,000, and you said to yourself, okay, I've got 50,000, so I'm just going to buy it. Or I've got 30,000 and I'm going to pay the 30,000 and debenture, 20 or borrow 20. Like, have we broken down that far? And is that something that we should look at?
I think the answer is we haven't got to that degree of detail, Dan. There's been some general information has been provided in terms of other sources of funding, such as development charges could provide around $400,000.
Right. Yeah.
There's some other reserves that could provide a modest amount, but we're not talking significant dollars relative to the scale of the project.
Right.
So basically, what we're looking at right now is I think your $5 million hypothetical is perfectly fine at this point. We're probably, if we're going to say we're going to pull the trigger, we're going to go today, we'd probably have to borrow $5 million or close to it.
Okay. Yeah.
Now there's a variety of options we could entertain, and certainly this is some of the discussion we need to get to is, do we need to ask the community to contribute more towards a project like this?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to finance it over 2 or 3 years to spread out the impact a little bit? So there's a variety of options that we can look at, but we haven't got down to a specific schedule list at this point, other than identifying those reserves, either DCs or some other modest reserves that could contribute to it. I mean, if you have feelings about how you think it ought to go, we don't have a reserve set aside for this project.
Mm-hmm.
If you have thoughts about how it should go, I think this is a great forum to have that discussion.
Yeah. No, I'm just kind of trying to get a handle, I guess, maybe, how much I know, and it says in here that we've got, certain amounts of money in development charges, and we've got, other funds kind of set aside for various things. And then we see, we see the debenture schedule, the 25-year debenture schedule, which is really good, gives you a really good idea on how, how much it's going to cost to pay that all back. So I don't really have an idea on that. I'm going to chew on that a little bit more, but I just think it's one of those things that, as like, if we're going to proceed with, asking other municipalities if they're willing to participate, they might, one of the questions they might say, well, how much do you have, and how much are you willing to, how much are you going to contribute? So I just think that's the financial end is always the difficult topic. Let's put it that way. But I think some of the numbers that have been put in this report and the schedule certainly give it an eye-opening. It's eye-opening for sure.
So just to circle back briefly, I think everybody was good with inviting the architect to have some discussion about possible scale and scope of the project. So I think we can give direction to staff to see if we can get that initiated and going for a future meeting. And certainly, Dan, you've raised the big question, the elephant in the room, if we want to put it that way, around the financing piece. Do we want to pursue that, have some more discussion about that today? So I'll throw that open to the other members of council.
I'll ask another question then in regards to that.
Okay, Dan, go ahead.
So by looking at the debenture schedule, let's just go to the Infrastructure Ontario debenture schedule on borrowing $2.5 million at 3.5%. Is that total repayment or total payment per year? Is it affordable by Wellington North?
I guess that depends who you ask. That's a lot of money, I think, in terms of the expectation. I think I don't have that schedule right in front of me, but I think it's talking about $400,000 or close to it, right, on an annual payment basis.
Well, it looks like the total payment per year is 150. What? 150.
That's
$51,000.
That's the $2.5 million debenture.
That's the $2.5 million.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking about the full 5.
Oh, okay. All right. No, I guess my question is $151,000. Is it attainable, or can we afford it? I guess that's what would it do to us? And I guess that's a question for the finance department.
Well, I guess I mean I can jump in and contribute some to that discussion. I mean, that 150,000 or whatever. I mean, our annual 1% of our annual tax levy is about $80,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that would to add that cost to the tax levy would be an additional 2% would have to be required just for that debenture. Now, that's a doing it on a one-time basis. There's other considerations. Do we borrow it over a couple of years and make it spread it out a little bit? Do we we're going to see some additional tax revenue come in from growth from our community that's going to help with some of that. But it becomes a question. What do we do? What do we think is manageable? Personally, I think we can find a way to make $2.5 million work without too much difficulty. When we get to 5, it's a much more difficult conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say the longer or the bigger the amount, the longer the pain of paying it off. Obviously, yeah, for sure. And that's a neat kind of a comparison, I guess, when you do the 150 compared to what the levy of 1% is per year.
I mean, the other piece we have to consider too is the other projects that are on the horizon and how we're going to pay for those as well. I mean, there's some big stuff in the planning horizon, such, even something like a fire hall in Mount Forest is on the short-term planning horizon. And we don't have reserves set aside for those projects either. We're going to have to borrow some money to make those happen. So all of that needs to be factored into what's affordable to kind of go back to your original question, Councillor Yake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's affordable, and then maybe what can be pushed out a little bit further, possibly too.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion on this anybody wants to have today? Certainly this will be coming back to our next meeting too, so we can continue it then, but anything else for today?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm not seeing anything else, so thanks for that discussion. We'll definitely come back to more as we go forward. We'll move on to items for consideration. Now, Steve, did you have ones you wanted to pull out?
I can wait till other people talk if you'd like.
Jump right in, Steve.
Yeah, if you didn't mind, I'd love to pull 2A and 2D, please. Thank you.
2A and 2D as in dog?
Yes. Okay. Bill 109 and then the Robertson landscape plan.
Okay. All right, thanks. Any others that people would like pulled out? Sherry, go ahead.
3A.
3A. That's the grant application support.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any others?
No.
Okay. We'll move on to the adopting all the others then. So we have a recommendation here that all items listed under items for consideration on the June 6, 2022 council agenda, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved and the recommendations therein be adopted. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we'll go back to 2A. This is in regard to the Bill 109. And I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North received the memorandum from Curtis Marshall, Manager of Development Planning, County of Wellington, dated May 20th, 2022, regarding Bill 109, More Homes for Everyone Act 2022. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Dan. And we'll open the floor for, did you have questions, Steve?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Mayor Lennox. And there is a lot of information here by, put together by Curtis. And there's just a couple of things that I think maybe needs a little bit more clarification if Curtis was available. I think I saw him on this call earlier.
Yeah, he's here.
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
There seems to be a, sorry, go ahead, Curtis, sorry.
No, go ahead, Steve. Did you have specific areas that you wanted to highlight?
No, I just wondered if there's any more clarity on some of these, some of the changes, like with the resolution to like that we can't not pass a minister's order. Just things of that nature. If you can elaborate a little bit more, I guess, maybe on the report, Curtis.
Okay. Curtis, are you able to help us out?
Sure. Yes. Thanks, Mayor Lennox. And it's a dangerous thing asking me for to talk more. So I'll try and keep it brief here, Councilor McCabe. So would you like I could briefly go through the report? Would that be?
If you didn't mind, just.
Okay, sure. Yep, I'm prepared to do that. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. So yeah, just to take you through the memo. So in late April, Bill 109 was given royal assent by the province. So that means it was put into force and effect. And Bill 109 included changes to several provincial acts, including the Planning Act. So according to the province, and these are their words, Bill 109 makes changes to the zoning, plan of subdivision, and site plan application processes to expedite approvals and timely decisions. It also ensures provincial housing policies are implemented and priority projects are expedited by making changes to provide the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing with a new dispute resolution mechanism. And finally, according to the province, Bill 109 enhances transparency and increases certainty of development costs through changes to development-related charges. So amongst the Bill 109, what I've pulled out is changes to the Planning Act that will be of interest to the municipality and will affect the municipality. And in the memo I outlined, there'll be a few changes to your processes that you'll need to implement and consider. So the first one to talk about is they established what they call a community infrastructure and housing accelerator tool. And as I understand, this is similar to a minister's zoning order, which has been used more recently by the province. So under this new tool, the province can expedite the approval of zoning bylaw amendments when requested by a municipality. So the province has developed requirements that would need to be met when a municipality makes a request to the province to ask for a zone change to be approved. And these would include that the township is satisfied that notice has been given appropriately, the lands aren't in the green belt, and there's various other matters, requirements that they've established. And they will be, as I understand it, they've indicated they'll be issuing further guidelines for the use of this tool. So they have released draft guidelines, but they haven't been finalized at this point. They've also revised the Planning Act related to zoning bylaw amendments. And this change relates to establishing a mechanism in which a municipality would have to refund application fees to an applicant if a decision is not made in a specified time period. So under the new changes, if a decision isn't made by a municipality within 90 days on a zoning amendment application, the township or municipality would have to issue a 50% refund to the applicant. And that is graduated in scale, and that after 210 days would have to issue a 100% refund. So now this requirement would come into effect for applications starting January 1st next year. So there's a couple key things maybe to point out with this is there aren't mechanisms. I guess there's no other new changes were made to the Planning Act or regulations at this point. So if an applicant takes time or doesn't respond to a request for some information from the municipality, the clock doesn't stop. So there's no, I guess to summarize, there's no clock stopping mechanism that would take place through the review of the application. So it would be, they've just simply set it out that it be a decision within 90 days. They've also implemented this refund process for site plan applications. So they've set that after 60 days, if a site plan isn't approved by a municipality, a municipality shall refund 50% of the application fees, and that's graduated as well up to 100%. So this change as well comes into effect January 1st next year. So they've also implemented some other changes to the site plan approval process. They've established that a municipality can establish complete application requirements. And that way a municipality would lay out in advance of an application being received to an applicant clearly what studies, drawings, and other requirements would be needed. And I believe this will be a key thing going forward in terms of processing applications and aiming to meet the deadlines that have been given for refunds. Another key change, the province has amended the Planning Act that going forward for any new applications after July 1st of this year, the approval cannot be given by council. Council will have to appoint a staff member or another person as prescribed to issue approval for site plans. So as I understand, the township now has delegated this authority to staff in most circumstances, but your bylaw does allow for a bump up to council in certain circumstances or for larger applications. So going forward, this bump up would no longer be permitted. We recommend that the township should review the existing delegation bylaw to ensure that it conforms with these new requirements. And if there are any changes needed, they should be made by July 1st, 2022. If the change, as I said, if the changes are needed. I think the last thing here to talk about, province through Bill 109 has established that municipalities must accept surety bonds to secure agreement obligations. So right now, most municipalities, and I believe also your township, will accept cash or a letter of credit as acceptable means of securing an agreement and securing the completion of works. Going forward, this would include other types of bonds and agreements, which I'm not well versed in at this point in surety, what surety bonds exactly are. However, to date, the province hasn't provided implementing regulations to put this into full force and effect. So in conclusion, the township will have to make some changes to the zoning bylaw and site plan approval processes. I've highlighted these and outlined them in more detail in the memo. The one thing I want to point out is that every municipality in the province is also in facing the same situation here, and there's lots of discussions going on about what are the best ways to update municipal processes in order to try and achieve approvals in the prescribed timeline. And so what we're suggesting is, and what planning staff will certainly be doing, is monitoring other municipal approaches across the province. And as we move forward, we'll have the opportunity to consider and pick some of the best items from the other municipal approaches rolling into the fall, as some of these changes in terms of refunds don't come into effect till January next year. So we'll have some time in the fall to consider this. So maybe I didn't touch on some of Councilor McCabe's questions, but I'm happy to delve deeper into some of these things.
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, that was good, and thanks very much for that further info, Curtis. I appreciate that. So with the refunds, so say the municipality is waiting on an outside party for more information before something is granted, and time runs out, and according to the 3-step of refund there, is there any mechanism, if it was not the municipality holding up the approval, to get that money refunded by the party that we're waiting on information from? Say we were waiting on information from one of the 3 conservation authorities in our municipality, and we didn't hear back in time. Can we get our money back after we have to pay it back? Can we get our money refunded by one of the CAs? Is there a mechanism that you know of for that, or has that been laid out at all? Or
no, that's through the mayor. That's a good question, and certainly a question that came up through discussions with the province. The province did some information sessions with planners across the province. So essentially, if an agency needs more time or takes time to submit comments back to the municipality, and there's a lot of cases these comments are critical to the application being considered. Unfortunately, the Planning Act changes do not provide any don't account for these. So there is the clock, according to the regulations, doesn't stop. So ultimately, if an agency took the full 90 days to review something and didn't comment, as it's worded, the municipality would be on the hook for the refund.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, thanks again, Curtis, for all of that as well. Thank you. I don't have any further questions, Mayor Lennox.
Okay, so Curtis, something you said did raise a flag with me, so I got to just follow up question. You mentioned that, and you and Councilor McCabe talked about it a little bit, you mentioned was around the site plan agreement thing, there would be the ability to establish application requirements. And my understanding of that would be that that would help to avoid this situation where, you know, if something were missing, they couldn't submit the application and get the clock counting up until that point. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes. So our thoughts are at this point that identifying upfront clearly a list of prerequisites for the application to be submitted and adequately assessed. It'll be important to have a process set up where we do identify what is needed. I think that process is quite typical in the province and certainly in the township. For most pretty well all applications, we have pre-consultation meetings where we meet with an applicant and go over what studies or documentation we would need. So what the province has done is they've actually formalized that for site plan approval. The Planning Act was silent on site plan approval, although that was probably the practice across the province anyways, was to have a complete application process for site plans. So I think that there are townships that are talking about, what ways of what is a complete application and deciding when you deem something complete. So is that when an application, when all the studies have been reviewed and signed off on, that could be by, some townships are kicking around that maybe that's a prerequisite before you deem an application complete. So for example, your stormwater report would have to be reviewed and signed off on by the Conservation Authority and the town engineer before an application would be deemed complete. So those are sort of the discussions that are taking place out there right now. I think if that hopefully answers your question, but
it's got part of it. So the next question is very much related. So this change, the process change with regard to zoning bylaw amendments. Do we have the same latitude to adjust when we deem an application complete? Let me play out an example just as a demonstration of a concern that I see potentially coming. So an applicant submits a zoning application, and based on staff's best recommendation, all the studies have been requested and at the time of the application, but they don't necessarily arrive in a timely way. And then they comes to a public meeting and council says, oh, wait a minute, because of the sensitivity of this, I think we should have a traffic study, and they send it back. And now is the clock still running through all this? And are we running the risk of running the clock out by asking for more information at the council level?
So I would say certainly the process doesn't preclude the requirement for an additional study later, or through public comments. There's a concern raised that, as you suggested, there's a concern raised and there's further information and review. So that still could take place and is part of our planning process here. But unfortunately, that would allow for the clock to run out. So if the ball's, let's say, using back in the applicant's court and we need something, more information, the clock unfortunately does not stop in that process. Now, in terms of the refunds, there is not a mechanism or an appeal period or anything that's been established for, as I understand it, for refunds. So simply it would come down to, according to the province, the information they provided to legal means if an applicant, there was a dispute over refunding of fees.
This sounds like something we should be talking to our political counterparts of the province about, because this looks like it's potentially a problem to manage going forward.
Yes, I think it's well, certainly from the review I've done, a lot of municipalities have expressed concerns with this refunding component, and have expressed concerns to the province about it, that it may not lead to efficiencies as expected.
Okay. Steve, and then Lisa.
No, Lisa, go ahead first. I had my first question, so I won't forget my next question. So.
I think there are a lot of questions, and maybe you can't answer this, Curtis, I don't know, but it talks about new tools to address dispute resolution. I am so unclear on that, what they're planning to do better than the OLT, which has a backlog of at least 1,000 cases, last I heard. Do you have any clue what they're talking about?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Hearn. So I don't believe it relates at all to the OLT. So the changes they've talked about, there are some carry-on home warranty changes, and I don't think there's a lot of detail about what all these dispute. So I believe going through it, it's not really related to the Planning Act, maybe other acts as well. This dispute mechanism. I should clarify, it does allow as something that may not affect directly the township, but indirectly it would through the county. So it allows the minister to ask the OLT to review an application. So either an official plan approval, or if there's a request under the accelerator tool, if there's concerns, the minister could ask the OLT to weigh in on an application. So that's something new in a situation where there's a minister's decision required.
Any other questions? Now, Steve.
Yeah, thanks again, and through you, Mayor Curtis. So, the end of the day, the municipality, it sounds like either way is left holding the bag if there's a delay and the time keeps running and there's no stoppage. Would that be fair to say?
Through the mayor, yes. Well, in the sense, I would say yes, that it's ultimately up to the township to issue the refund. So if depending, no matter what the reason would be for additional time needed, it would be up to the township to issue the refund. Okay.
And then just another one. So how will this affect development charges as well? Will we have to change or revisit it, or?
Darren, you want to tackle that one?
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. As far as development charges, it won't change our actual fees or our bylaw.
Okay.
I understand it's more of a posting where we are on the website, more of a reporting issue.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if maybe we shouldn't be sending a letter of concern to AMO. If there are other municipalities out there that have concerns with the accelerator tools and the refunds, if there's no stop mechanism and you don't have all of the information, I mean, it seems like this policy is a little bit unbalanced. So I'm just wondering maybe if we shouldn't be drafting something to send to AMO. It sounds to me like we all kind of have concerns around that issue in particular with this new policy. And if there are others, then I'm just wondering if that's not a direction we should go.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I'm good, thank you.
Curtis, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, just on through you, Mayor Lennox, to Councillor Burke's comment. So the AMO comments dated April 27th, they also flagged to the province the concern with the required fee return. So they've also expressed that concern to the province.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried, thank you. We'll move on to 2D now. This is in regard to the Clayton and Allison Robertson site plan. And we have a recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report DC 2022-16 regarding the final approval of the Clayton and Allison Robertson site plan agreement. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. Open the floor for discussion. Steve, I think you had some questions on this one.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Mayor, I like where this has gone and where it's going to go, and just wanted to make sure, like, so once this is done, they can start digging almost right immediately. I guess probably Darren, you'd be the best to answer that.
Go ahead, Darren.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, they will be. They do need their building permit issued, and
Right.
Later on in the agenda, you'll see that there's a bylaw to remove their holding provision. So, yep. So both of those, then yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to 3A now. This is the grant applications, letters of support. And the recommendation reads as follows: that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report EDO 2022-21, and further that Council approve the following letters of support. For New Growth Family Center to support an application to the Center Wellington Community Foundation, and the Mount Forest Curling Club to support an application to the Ontario Trillium Foundation. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Dan, seconded by Sherry, and we'll open the floor for discussion. Sherry, I think you had some questions. Go ahead.
No, I just really wanted to highlight this report, Mayor Lennox. I always think it's great when we can put our support as council and staff behind two more good causes that we have within our community. New Growth Family Center touches a lot of people's lives here in Mount Forest, and happily support their request. And the Mount Forest Lions Club, or the Mount Forest Curling Club, sorry, is also a long-standing group of individuals within the community. So always nice to highlight and be able to support those folks.
Thanks, Councillor Burke. Well said. Other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of our items for consideration. Is there any notice of motion this afternoon? Okay, not seeing any, so I'll move on to community group meeting program report. Anybody have anything they'd like to report on today? Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. In your package, you can see the SBCA meeting that we had not too long ago. So no need to really report on that. But I was extremely happy to present Susan Trevors, the executive director up at Mount Forest, and Dr. Alex with the doctor recruitment grant check for 10 grand to help bring nurses, doctors, lab technicians, etc. into our Wellington North health team, and just very happy and proud to do that on behalf of the residents of the Township of Wellington North.
Thanks, Steve. Any other updates anyone would like to share today? Dan, go ahead.
Just a quick reminder of the hospital gala on June 17th. Hopefully everybody can make it. Going to be probably another fabulous event. So Mr. McCabe can bring his checkbook and buy all kinds of good things at the table. Just like the last time.
Thanks for that, Dan. No setup required.
No pressure there, Steve.
And I'm sure Councillor Yake will match everything that Councillor McCabe does.
If he wants to go that route, let's do it.
Sounds good. Sorry, Mayor, just one more thing I forgot to mention. The Optimists in Arthur are going to have their grand opening for the playground and everything down in Arthur, right beside the pool, on the 25th of June. Unfortunately, I cannot be there, but I'm going to be away that weekend. But hopefully, anyone from council can get there. I think you're down on the docket to speak, Mayor, and it's a great thing. It's another great community service club helping out the good people of Wellington North. And it's a great little facility, and it's being really well used. So,
thanks, Steve. Yes, I intend to be there. Any other community group reports that anyone would like to share today? Sherry, go ahead, and Lisa.
So, as council knows, last week we started our You've Been Flocked campaign. The birds have been traveling throughout the community. Last week's update, a week ago today, we had raised $3,000. Wow. This week hadn't been sold out at this point. So we are sold out, but stay tuned. The flock for the flock tally, and the birds may reappear in the fall before they migrate south.
Thanks, Councillor Burke. And I assume that these birds are immune to the avian influenza we heard about earlier today.
Oh, Lord.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. They've had their shots.
Good Lord.
Councillor Yake, I'll go to you, and then Councillor Hearn, I know, was on the list.
Just to add to Councillor Burke's comments, it's been fun moving the birds around and putting them on people's lawns, and seeing some of the reactions of some of the people that have been flocked. So it has been fun. It's been a good fundraiser, and hopefully it'll carry on.
Okay, Councillor Hearn.
That certainly does look like a lot of fun, for sure.
Oh, it is.
So cool. But I don't want any. Speaking with Faye this morning, there is an Arthur 150 meeting this evening. She asked me to pass on to council that there is a change to where we are going to meet for the parade, because we are riding in a horse-drawn vehicle. We're to meet at the Farmers Plus, so we'll be in a different spot than the rest of the lineup. But don't park there, because there will be other horses and things. I'm told don't park in the Farmers Plus parking lot, but make sure that that's where you meet, okay? Concrete did get poured for the Brent Barnes Memorial Skate Park, so that was pretty exciting. I was down there, and I didn't even know exactly for sure that they were coming, and then a truck showed up and started whipping out lumber and all sorts of things for forums. So that was kind of cool. Excited about that. And if you haven't been through Arthur, I think that the planters and the ferns and everything that are put out by the Arthur BIA, they're getting great reviews, and I think they look absolutely wonderful.
Okay. Any others that anybody else has? I just have a brief update. My own, I had an occasion on Friday afternoon, kind of a last minute thing, but one of our local businesses, Silver Fox Distillery, has won some significant awards through the U.S. Open for Spirits contest. I happened to be able to be there when the awards were presented. There was 6 medals and a plaque for the grand champion. That's from a distillery that, first of all, it's a U.S. thing, so Canadian is somewhat unique, but it's for a 2-year-old, little over 2-year-old distillery. To win this kind of award is really unprecedented for the U.S. Open, and clearly they are doing a good job at what they're doing. And I spent some time there after the presentation, and there's a really good story to tell there with that business too, and I think it's a great opportunity to invite people to our community and learn about the distillery and how it's contributing to our community. They're trying to include lots of locally produced things in their in their recipes, and it's really quite an interesting story. So it's a pleasure to be involved in that. It was kind of a last minute because the guy was coming from the US to make the presentation, and they weren't sure whether he was going to make it across the border in time for certain things or not. So I had about a half an hour's notice to get there. But was very glad to be able to be there. Don't think I have anything further at this point. So we'll move on to bylaws. We have a couple of bylaws today, and before we dive into the bylaws, one of them, of course, is to appoint a new director of finance and a treasurer. So before we do that formally, I thought maybe I would have staff kind of do an introduction. So I'm not sure who's taking this, whether it's you, Darren, or Amy. Amy, you're the one taking it, great. So if you can formally introduce us, that would be wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So today we are very pleased to welcome Farhad Hossain to the Wellington North team. Just a bit of background on Farhad. So he does come to us with over 15 years of cross-functional finance experience. He's mainly worked in focused areas in the housing, healthcare, and consumer goods industries. Over the past years, he's been on the executive leadership teams of multiple organizations, such as the Kids Ability Children Treatment Center, 2 housing cooperatives, and he also volunteers on various not-for-profit organizations. Farhad also brings with him a Master's of Science in Accounting from Queen's University, as well as a Master of Business Administration and Finance from the University of Calgary. So we are very pleased to welcome him today. And I don't see him on my screen, but I think he might have his camera on or not. I don't see him.
His name is popped up on the screen, but I don't see a picture. So we'll assume that that's technical difficulty, not shyness, Farhad. And on behalf of council, welcome aboard. And if you have a few words, oh, there you are.
Through you, Mayor, I had a little bit of technical difficulty figuring out how the webcam works.
So welcome, Farhad. If you'd like to share a few words, that would be wonderful. If not, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No problem. Through you, Mayor. I'm really pleased to join the Wellington North Municipality. It is my, it's a career change, sector change. I'm really excited to learn the new way of doing things and contribute and bring my expertise in the finance and purposely oriented in to help council and the staff build a community which can answer all the questions pointed out, like how we should be structuring our funding or financing for the pool and all those things. I look forward to be engaged and learn from each of you in coming days.
That's great, Farhad. A lot happening on your first day, I can tell. Okay. Nothing further. We'll go to the formal part of appointing you, Farhad. So we have a couple of bylaws here. Recommendation is that bylaw number 64-22 and 65-22 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. If I could have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry. Any discussion on those? All those in favor? That's carried.
Welcome to the team.
So it's official, Farhad. You're on board.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to our cultural moment. The cultural moment for June 6th celebrates the Arthur Barn Quilt Trail Project. The response from the Arthur and area to the Arthur Area Barn Quilt Trail Project this year has been amazing. More than 60 barn quilts will be in the area for tourists to seek out any day of the year, but not everyone knows much about barn quilts. Barn quilts are quite simply a painted depiction of a quilt square on wood or signboard, which is then installed on a barn or other building. The modern versions are often posted on houses, garages, garden sheds, or used as garden decor. They often tell you something about the owners, a story, an interest, a group they support, like this Guelph Junior Griffin's barn quilt on Schmidt Street. Modern barn quilts have relatively short history according to the internet. A Small Farms Canada article from 2018 describes their beginning in 2001 with Donna Sue Grover of Ohio, who began to use these paintings to brighten up her tobacco farm buildings and to pay homage to her mother who loved to quilt. This symbolic Arthur since 1872 barn quilt can be seen on Clark Street in Arthur. Barn hex signs have been around a lot longer. They were brought to North America in the 17th century by the Pennsylvania Dutch, who interestingly are mostly German. The German word for German is Deutsch, so that may explain the apparent misnomer. The name hex may have come from the German word for six, because the hex signs were often six-pointed stars. They're commonly recognized hex signs that welcome or that wish for abundant crops or good health. The Silver Fox and Arthur made this mariner's compass design into their own by adding their silver fox in each corner, and the Wellington North Cultural Roundtable barn quilt is proudly mounted at the entrance into the Arthur Community Center. Where it is a barn quilt or a hex sign or a cave painting, people will always try to decorate their homes in some way. It is evidence that creativity and the appreciation of art is part of the human makeup. This was submitted by Doris Kassan from the Cultural Roundtable. Okay, we have some closed meeting matters to deal with today, so we will, before we move into the closed meeting, I'll just highlight the upcoming meetings. So we have Recreation, Parks and Leisure Committee meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. As mentioned, I think by Councillor Yake, the Hospital Foundation Gala, June 17th at 5 p.m. Farmers Market, June 25th, 8:30 to noon. And the next regular council meeting on the 27th of June. So with that, I will have a recommendation to move into closed session. That the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North go into a meeting at 3:37 p.m. that is closed to the public under subsection 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, specifically for item D, labor relations or employee negotiations, and item B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And we'll deal with two reports, HR 2022-005, employee remuneration, and HR 2022-006, the acting assignment pay for CAO.